Present.
John Butita,
Here.
Gene Crosby.
Present.
And I am also present. We have a quorum.
Hey, what about me? Oh, Democrat side. Never mind.
This is just the operations. We haven't got to caucus yet. We're just doing operations. So first item is approval of February 2020 minutes. Can I have a motion? Ms. Crosby, seconded by Mr. Hoffman. Any discussion on the minutes? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The minutes are approved. Is there anybody from the public that signed up to speak with us?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll get that portion then. Move on to item E, fire alarm notification panel and device replacement for the juvenile detention center. Mr. Chapman?
I would defer to Mr. Franks, who's here to speak to that. You don't mind?
Is that for me? I'm sorry, my phone was
Yep.
working at that time.
That's for you.
Yes, the fire alarm at juvenile detention is no longer serviceable anymore. It's not supported by anyone at the moment. So we need to get a new fire alarm and devices out at the juvenile detention center. We're asking for a single source because all of our buildings, we have 10 buildings with the same kind of fire alarm system. So we'd be able to use devices between each one. So we only have to stock certain parts and we can work on the notifier panel ourselves.
All right. Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we want to keep with our fire protection. I see this isn't a resolution or ordinance, so it must be a heads up that this is coming, that you must be looking for a direction to go.
No, it really is a resolution. It's just, I think it's worded a little bit differently. But it's actually authorizing let's see here. It's actually authorizing the purchasing director to issue a purchase order for the amount of, I believe it's $48,750. Sean, you might want to explain the other quote that you did get.
There is a simplex system in the building now, and they are the, simplex is the one with the government contract, but yet we still got a price from them that was almost twice as much for $84,978.
Ooh.
How many square feet is that building, Mr. Franks?
Oh, I was hoping you weren't gonna ask that. Hang on, I can shrink you guys
Just an
down.
approximate. Are we talking 50 or 100 or how? Just an approximation is fine.
I want to say it is like 50,000. Actually, it's only 27,300 now that I can get to my spreadsheet.
Okay, that 48,750 seems high for that square footage. You said you did have multiple people bid it?
But we only had simplex because we'd rather go with the notifier because that is in the rest of our buildings. So we can transfer parts from building to building and we can work on the notifier system ourselves.
Okay, is there any other discussion for Mr. Franks, or do you have anything else to add, Mr. Franks?
I think that's it.
Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was this budgeted?
I don't control the juvenile budget, so I'm guessing, no, it wasn't because the system, we just got the letter that the system was obsolete and everything, so we had to go out for bids or quotes anyway.
Who told you the system was obsolete?
Simplex,
So,
they are the ones that were servicing the panel and everything. It is a simplex panel.
and so this is going to add to our budget deficit, I assume, because it's,
This will come out of the detention home budget, and normally they have sufficient amount of funds to cover expenditures such as this. I think they have about 70,000 budgeted for building repairs. So we should be able to cover it within their own budget.
Okay, so Simplex is a company that provides service, but they're not the vendor that can install the system?
Yes, they were the vendor to install the original system and service the original system.
And then,
since
but
1991.
not this replacement system.
Now the replacement, we'd like to go with the notifier because then it matches 10 of our other buildings and we can use parts from our current stock to work on it.
Okay, and Simplex was like $40,000 higher than this bid?
Correct. And that's with government pricing.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Completely not working right now, Mr. Franks? There is no fire protection?
There is fire protection now, but the panel maybe once a week blinks and resets itself. So we'd like to get this going as soon as we can.
Any other?
It is an addressable system, so it's a smart panel. So when it does the poll, it sometimes shuts the panel off and reboots itself.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Motion passes. Next item is a resolution to temporarily authorize the outdoor sale and delivery act of alcohol liquor, and I so move. Can I have a second? Ms. Crosby seconds. The item is before us. Mr. Chapman, this kind of falls in line with Rockford and Loves Park and allowing restaurants to be able to sell alcohol beverages. Is that accurate?
Yes, out through the outside, that type of thing. Bill Emmert is on the call also and could address what's in the particular resolution. Bill?
Take yourself off mute.
You got it. Should be up in the
Upper right corner. Tap the space bar.
there you go. You're on now, Bill.
Okay, am I on now?
Yes.
Okay. The State Liquor Control Commission sent a notice out to allow to-go sales and deliveries, and I pretty much used the language from their notice with respect to allowing the sales. I did put in something extra that if they do use a third-party delivery person, they would still be responsible if it's delivered to a minor. The other thing we put in the resolution was extending the current licenses. The liquor licenses expire on April 30th of each year. So we went ahead and continued that to, I think it was July 31st. Hopefully we'll be out of this situation and be able to take care of the applications at that time. Those are the two main things in the resolution. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Mr. Emmert, if you could run through, how would a place verify that somebody is 21 or over? What kind of systems in place?
If you look at the resolution, that's language I took from the state where the person who's given the liquor needs to look at the person, and if they feel there's a concern, to get ID if possible. And if they can't do those two things, then they don't make the delivery and give the money back. That's spelled out in the resolution, and that's language straight from the State Liquor Commission notice that they sent out allowing to-go sales and deliveries.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion for this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. Is there anything else for the good of the order for this operations meeting? Mr. Butita. You're still on mute, John.
Okay, there we go. I wonder if we can get an update from our people at Prairie Forge to find out how, if they're being delayed or how their project is going with the public safety building.
Is that something you can chase down, Mr. Chapman, see if they're continuing operations?
Yes, I can. Actually, we're gonna have a meeting with them on Wednesday by the same means that we're doing here. But I think there's a delay just because of what's going on. So, but I'll follow up and let you know.
Thank you.
Mr. Salgado, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question. I noticed that the Rockford Register Star over the weekend on Sunday came out with the online sales of essentially the property for the sales are delinquent tax with Regional Plan 1. So I was wondering if we could get an update, whether it's from the state's attorney's office regarding our statuses with our old, the transition from the old to the new, obviously vendor that we have. If we can get that sometime in the near future, that'd be great. I know that, you know, it came out, it was in the Sunday newspaper, the article regarding the delinquent tax, you know, online sell. So just wanted to just get an update. I know that we had discussions regarding that, and I just wanted to see if we can get an update at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do that.
Thank you, Mr. Emmert. Is there anything else for the Operations Committee? I have a motion to adjourn. Ms. Crosby, seconded by Mr. Salgado and Mr. Butita. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We are now adjourned. And Gus, we're staying right here for caucus, right? Give it just a few more minutes, then we'll get started with our joint caucus.
Gus, can you hear me? Jim Webster's on the phone. He's having trouble getting in to the video thing because of his internet connection. He can just call in, right?
Yes,
So he is asking me, where does he find the number to call in?
it's in the invite, so let me text it to him.
Jim, did you hear that? Gus is going to text it to you. Okay, that'd be great. All right, bye. All right, thank you, Gus.
Hey, Keith,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me? Boomer and I always did it was we always let the majority party chair run the caucus, just so you know.
Okay,
Okay?
I can do that. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Fellers.
Hey, what's going on?
Where are you at, man?
I'm at home.
You got the state, you got Winnebago County emblem behind you?
Hold on.
backwards.
Is it backwards? Okay, because it looks right to me. I wasn't sure. I'll fix that.
Man, you are dedicated.
I got a green screen here. Hold on.
There you go.
This is literally my day every day. This is how I communicate with customers now.
I heard Paul say that Webster's trying to call in, so we'll give him just another minute or two, see if Webster can join us, and then we'll get started.
He's got the telephone number and code.
I think that was his number. It popped in for a second, it popped out, but we'll get started. Once Joe and Gene and everybody get back to their computers, we'll get started.
That was me, Keith. I was just verifying I gave Jim the right number and passcode.
Thank you.
You want me to call him and see what he's doing?
That might complicate it for him.
Okay.
Use your best judgment. All right, Joe, I think we get this thing started. I think probably for this virtual meeting, maybe it's best off do a roll call. We'll call to order the joint caucus. I'll call off the Republican names. Do you want to call off the Democrats, Joe, or do you want me to do all, or how can I do this the best?
I'll call the Dems.
Okay. So Paul Arena,
Here.
Gene Crosby. We'll circle back to her. John Butita,
Here.
Dave Kelly,
Here.
Steve Schultz, Steve?
Here.
Thank you, sir. Is that Mr. Webster on the phone?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. Ms. Crosby, have you returned yet? I can see her screen still up. I don't see her though. I'll let you know if she comes back. Mr. Hoffman, you have the Democrats.
I do. Ms. Gorel,
Present.
Ms. Red,
Here.
Mr. Neighbors, Mr. Fellers,
Here,
Mr. Gisoni,
Here.
Mr. Salgado,
Present.
Mr. Girl.
Here.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, this one absent.
Excellent. So we'll get started. Just run straight down the county board agenda is how we typically do it. The Republicans, let me know if you need something else to be done, Joe. I'd like to remind Dorothy Red that she's got the invocation for Thursday. If we're going to do one, just a reminder for you, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. First standing committee report is finance. Mr. Salgado.
Thank you. There's obviously three things coming up before the board this Thursday. One is the first one's an ordinance imposing a special realtors occupation tax for the mental health. As we know that it passed last December and it got on the ballot, got approved. So now we have to move forward so retailers can start charging that tax. And obviously from Mr. Chapman, he's saying that probably October, we'd start seeing some of the revenues come forward sometime around that time frame. So that's really all that ordinance is doing, is just getting us up to par so we can send this out with regulations so we can start imposing the tax and actually start collecting it sometime in the fall. So that's the number one item. I don't know if anybody has any questions regarding that. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Fellers.
thank you. Quick question on that. So if we do, the moment we impose this and pass this and the ordinance is approved, at that point we start collecting the tax, or is there a date down the road that we would collect the tax by? Is there the date it goes into effect on?
I don't know the exact date, but I believe it's sometime in the summertime where we start actually collecting that. I don't know the exact date. I don't have my notes from that meeting, but essentially it would be somewhere around the summer time frame that it gets kicked off, and then obviously we start collecting it. The revenue streams come in somewhere around October, November-ish time frame.
So then my follow-up question to that is, does this have to be done immediately, or can we say put it off for 6 weeks or so? Does it have to be done right away?
My recollection, and whoever was on the finance, if you guys wouldn't mind speaking up as well, my understanding is that we want to have enough significant notice of some sort to the retailers so they can start implementing that at a certain time frame. So it does want to give that heads up and not just say, hey, let's do it a month and a half from now or whatever the case may be. It gives enough significant heads up from my recollection on that.
I believe
Sure. I'm mostly just concerned that it might be confusing given the number of retailers shut down right now, as well as everything else. If there was room to say, just delay this, just to not put too much on their plates, that would be nice. But if we can't do it, we can't do it.
And I believe Salgado, the collection wouldn't start until July, and we wouldn't see the revenues until October, was what was discussed.
And as I recall, does it not have to be in by the end of this month? That resolution being approved by us, and it has to be in by the end of this month. Where's Steve at? He could talk to it.
I believe Mr. Chapman is not part of the caucus, so he decided to opt out. He was on earlier for operations, but my recollection is along your lines, Ms. Gorel, on that aspect of it, and we have to give some sort of clarification notice to the retailers in order for them to start collecting it sometime in the summertime. So
Correct. Now, if you remember correctly, about a week ago or so, Steve did send you on an email the instructions that we had to follow, and that means it has to get approved of now so that we can get it to the state before the end of the month, because then they have to do the notification and all that. So it has to be done now. We cannot lay this over. And what would be the purpose of laying it over or extending it?
I think Mr. Fellers kind of mentioned that with everything that's currently going on with the confusion of essentially with COVID right now and everything being shut down in place or in shelter, it kind of brings a little bit of confusion of, when to collect it, what's it for, and, with the bandwidth, essentially what's currently happening right now. I think that's where he was kind of posing that question, if that it was a viable option. And so he just wanted clarification on that. I don't know if that explains anything. But.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions regarding that? All right. I guess I'll move on to the next item, which is a resolution authorizing the execution of the addendum of the interlocal agreement between the city of Rockford, Winnebago County for 2017, 2018, 2019. And for Edward Brin Memorial Justice Grant Program Award. Essentially, just to give a little synopsis, this is an agreement between the city of Rockford where, we're going to get reimbursed some of the funds essentially through this grant that we both, the city and the Winnebago County, I think it's about somewhere around in the mid 70s, I believe so, for the 17, 18, 19. There was a question by Mr. Schultz. He brought it up as why are we approving some of the expenditures regarding this when we haven't collected the revenue? And so we should be able to get this grant money sometime in the near future, probably in fall, I believe is what Mr. Chapman kind of explained to us. But essentially, we have already have an agreement in place. This is just a formal authorization to receive those funds of some sort. But it is a question that was brought up by Mr. Schultz. Very good question. Why are we spending this money when we're not receiving in the correct years? Obviously, 2017, 2018 has already transpired. It's something that was brought up, but an understanding, but it's already obviously an award that we kind of have right now with the city of Rockford to get reimbursed about 70, mid 70s, around $70,000. So just wanted to, so we need to get this resolution in place for that. So if there's anyone in the finance committee that wants to add to that, to the discussion, but that's the gist of that resolution, obviously, for this. But any questions regarding that? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the last item, which is the resolution extending the deadline for the filing application for the senior citizens assessment freeze homestead exemption. Mr. Hughes kind of, Tom Hughes explained this. Essentially, the deadline's coming up. I don't know the exact date. I want to say it's April or May-ish that it's coming due. And this is just an extension for them with everything that's kind of going on with COVID, with the shelter in place at home. A lot of people are senior citizens that have to bring in their documentation to qualify for this extension, and so exempt freeze. So they want to extend this. I want to say sometime in June, July is the time frame. I don't know the exact date on when they're extending it. Essentially, it's an additional 30 to 60 days. I'm sorry, 30 to 60 days so essentially, hopefully, this once the shelter and home is released, then they can start attracting those individuals to bring in their documentation. So that's currently the issue right now, because most of the Winnebago County offices, departments have shut their doors. Obviously, they're still working internally, doing what they need to do, but The front end with customers is kind of limited at this point in time with the number of, from the governor's obviously mandate to have individuals of 25 or 10 individuals in a building. So this is just extending that, the freeze for the senior citizens. And that's pretty much in a nutshell what that is for. Any other questions for that regarding that? Yes, Mr. McDonald.
Were you first, Keith? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Gurl. I'll wait.
That form is a pink form. It comes out usually close to the middle of April. It is mailed out to the citizens who will qualify for it. Are they still going to mail it out at that time, or are they going to hold off the mailing of it? Because the citizens who need that are sometimes people who are going to be applying for their car license, and they can get a discount on it. And there's other things that homestead is good for. So I'd like to know if they're going to be mailing that out to our seniors that qualify by the middle of the month. And then they can turn it in anytime they want.
Yeah, I don't think that question was asked. It's a good question to ask, but I'm assuming that the procedure is still going to exist the same. It's just the extension of the assessment, obviously, the deadline for that.
The due back.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, I'm not Tom Hughes' department here, but I'm assuming that the process will remain the same. Send out the applications via mail. And then after that, obviously the only thing is just a deadline that's going to be extended.
Thank you.
Mr. McDonald, you wanted to add something else?
I would like to add something. I support this extension for the homestead. Stringing that out. I did receive a phone call this weekend from the treasurer of North Park Fire Protection District, and he's concerned because he keeps hearing that we might be pushing out the deadline to file your property taxes. And North Park Fire is one of many small fire departments that just don't have the revenue, in the bank to wait for an extension on property tax filing. So there's a little bit that I've seen in the news. There's some talk that I've heard about it. I just want to get on record my thoughts to begin with, that there's too many small fire departments and other small municipalities that rely on getting those funds in a timely manner. Just my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
That's a good point. The only issue that, well, I don't know if it's an issue, but it's really relied upon the last payment that is done around the fall, September, typically. I believe last year, if I'm not mistaken, it was extended for about a week or so. And so it kind of falls into, that time frame. So wherever that second payment comes into play, there's a 30-day, I want to say, for those that want to obviously protest their taxes or anything of that nature, can do so. The hearings are a separate issue. I just think that the file date might change for the protesting of the taxes, the property taxes based on the second payment. But I don't know about the rest. I think we can address that with Tom as well, Hughes department, to see if we can get a sense and idea where they're leaning towards. So at least we can give some direction on some of the municipalities or taxing bodies that require these revenues or whatever of sort. So I think it's a good question to ask.
Mr. Salvato, you might want to also contact the treasurer's office in regards to that.
Absolutely.
Because that office is the one who will be collecting the taxes that this money comes out of. So it depends on if they get those tax bills out in the right time when that money would be coming in. So it would be smart to get a hold of Mrs. Gorel and find out.
Absolutely. I will do. Mr. Butita?
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. McDonald as far as keeping the due dates for the tax collection in place, but we may want to consider that if people are late, maybe we might want to waive the late fees if they can prove unemployment or something like that. So that might be something we want to consider. Just waiving the late fees and I don't think they're substantial fees, but it's something we can talk about. We have time.
Absolutely. And I'll reach out to Ms. Gorel said, the treasurer's office as well, and and get an explanation of what direction they're in currently right now on that aspect of it. Questions regarding, any other questions regarding this piece of it? I got one more thing that I just wanted to bring up potentially is, obviously the host fees discussion that we kind of had. That was part of the discussion we had on last finance as well. And Mr. Chapman's supposed to be sending this information out. I got to touch base with him again just to remind him if he could send that out. He's got some numbers basically where we're at for 2020 on the host fees and our commitments that we have for this year and where we're going to end up. So that information's still out there. I know there's been talks about with this COVID issue that we're currently experiencing about there's been talk about the $250,000 emergency kind of loan across the board. So there's discussions about that, where that's going to go. Obviously with the whole stimulus package that's currently passed by the federal government and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things going in there. And so it's good information. I think we need to get a good idea, but that was part of the discussion we had on Thursday as well. So I just wanted to reiterate that information is going to come forward to you guys. If you have questions, ideas, or anything, I know that there's some vocals out there in support or different changes to the host fees structure as well. So more discussion to have that. And that obviously goes through the Economic Development Committee. The finance is just talking about where we're at, how we're doing financially on that aspect of it. So more information to come like that. Just keep in mind, there might be something coming forward. Don't know, but just wanted to give everybody a heads up, and hopefully Mr. Chapman can shed more light on the balances for that. All right.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. This is Jim Webster. Having trouble with an internet connection, so I had to phone in. Anyways, yeah, I talked to you about that the other day, about the host fees, and kind of reminded you that we could see a dip in any returns on the host fee funds due to the economy the way it is right now. So many businesses being shut down or really slowed down. So the intake at the landfill could be considerably less than what we're used to. And so that will affect the returns that we get out of it in return. And so as long as we're on finance, one of the other things I want to just kind of remind ourselves of, this could have quite a bit of an economic effect on us in a return on the host fees, but also on our sales tax, because there's not much retail activity going on right now. And so our sales tax, we could get quite a dip in that as well, particularly when you see the big ticket items not selling, talking about cars and appliances and things like this. And so we could wind up getting quite a hit on that, on the sales tax. And then the motor fuel tax as well, because there's not much fuel being sold now compared to what it normally is. And on top of that, the price of fuel is about half, well, maybe something like that, of what it has been as well. So the motor fuel tax, we're going to get hit with a big loss on that as well, compared to what we're used to. Cars aren't moving, and when they are moving, they're not spending a lot of, because they're so fuel efficient. So there's not much fuel being sold. And then the other thing is with zero activity going on for any sporting activities or anything like that, the tourist dollars being spent in our community are going to be in the tank as well. And so I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that we could have one huge hit in the way of any income sources that we have if this keeps up much longer. That's all I got to say about that. Thank you.
May I interrupt, please? Jim, you forgot one other thing. You forgot
Okay.
the 1% sales tax on the jail will be going down too. And that's an obligation that we have to pay. So
Yes.
that's going to hit that one too.
Yeah, and to add to that, when you're talking about the jail now, with the release of 100 prisoners or whatever from the jail recently, now what's that going to do for the commissary money that the sheriff was planning on having to pay for some things? And so, there's a hit there as well. So the only thing I will say about that is with 100 less prisoners or whatever there is now, that's less stress on the guys that are left there to be corrections officers and have their job. So this is going to affect us. This ripple effect is going to hit us in so many different angles there that I don't know if we need to be prepared for it. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kelly, I know you had your hand up, and then I'll hand it over to Mr. McDonald.
It's a recession. It's obvious it's a recession. Everybody knows it. We just got to deal with it.
Mr. McDonald, that concludes what we're going to talk about in finance, the board.
Did you have your hands up, Mr. Fellers?
Thank you. Yeah, I actually just wanted to echo that. I mean, this county needs to be prepared for probably the next 2 budget cycles at a minimum at reduced revenues from where we've been at over the last year. And I think it would behoove us to start to put contingency plans in place and to have plans on how we're going to deal with what could potentially be 20 to 30% less revenue. This isn't going to, it's not as if when this ends, it's going to one day end and everything will go back to normal. There will be a long tail to the recovery process and then an even longer tail to the economic recovery process.
Thank you, Mr. Fellers. Let the record reflect Ms. Crosby and Mr. Booker is with us now. We'll move on to zoning with Mr. Webster.
Well, like everything else, we're dead in the water right now. We have had to lay over any meetings. It's kind of hard with the zoning because you have, starting with the Zoning Board of Appeals, you have to have people, allow for people to be there in person to petition what they want to do. And then at the Zoning Board of Appeals, you have to have the objectors, have them have their chance as well. And so now what are you going to do if we have 40 people that want to come to a Zoning Board of Appeals meeting? And so we're going to have to work around that as well. Now, when it comes to the committee meeting, obviously there's not so much discussion, but on this one particular item coming before us, with the people that want to have this text amendment to allow pigs in a residential district, at that one, that's unusual because it starts that zoning committee and those people get a chance to come in and say why they want this text amendment. Now, the other side doesn't get to object at that point. And so it starts at zoning committee. They would come before the zoning committee, tell us what they want to do and why they want to do it. And they could have a whole army of people there with them to verify that. But then at zoning committee, we would say yes or no. Do we like it? But still it goes forward to the county board and the county board says yes or no. And then it goes back to Zoning Board of Appeals before it comes back up the pipeline again. So that one's a real twisted story. And so we've been holding off on any of our zoning until we can figure out what the best way is to allow a number of people in the room. So I don't know if we could pull that off virtually or not. You'd have to have a manner for anyone that wanted to speak for or against an issue for them to come to the virtual meeting as well.
You do have 3 items for this week, Mr. Webster, that'll be read in to be laid over.
Correct, laid over.
Any other questions for Mr. Webster? Moving on to operations. We just had our meeting a few minutes ago. We've got a resolution for fire alarm notification panel and device replacement at the Juvenile Detention Center. That was going to be $48,750. Mr. Chapman indicated that it was their building maintenance budget. They do currently have some fire protection out there. They're having a big problem with the panel. So this almost $50,000 will go to completely gut and redo their fire protection system. Is there any questions on that? I see none. I'll move over to the other thing we had was resolution to temporarily authorize outdoor sale and delivery of alcohol liquor. And both items by passed unanimously. Is there any questions on the second one? See none. We'll move on to personnel policies. Anybody from that committee here that can speak to it? Mr. Reed, are you on personnel policies? Can you maybe speak to the 3 items that they have?
I'm not on that committee. I listened in. I don't have the agenda up right now.
Is there anybody on who is on that committee? I'm not familiar with the members of that committee.
What committee is it?
Personnel and policy.
Angie and Joe, you guys are on it.
Yes, but we didn't have a meeting.
I think it's tomorrow, isn't it?
We haven't had a meeting.
Dave Kelly's on it.
Yes, I am. I'm not aware of anything.
Okay.
This is Joe. Angie's actually the vice chair of the committee, and we didn't have anything.
Not really. All we talked about actually starting up this ad hoc committee so that we can get together and see what we want to do, who we want to hire for an administrator. We need to work on that. We've already wasted 5 months. And so tomorrow night, Paul will be hosting a meeting that you can all watch, and we're going to be talking about what we want for an administrator. And if we've had any applications in from the company we've hired, we will probably be talking about that tomorrow night. But the actual meeting, the only thing that actual meeting was the fact that we started this ad hoc committee. We brought it back. We had it before and we brought it back. Dan?
The items that I know we're voting on were on, you guys discussed on the April 2nd meeting, if that rings a bell at all. That would have been April 2nd. You guys met via Zoom to discuss those items, but that's just, I don't know if that helps you out.
Mr. Arena, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so I recall the conversation. The 2 insurance renewals are with the current provider. They did send it out to bid because I asked that question and they said that this was the best deal. And then the amendment to the coronavirus response policy is just based on changes that are being made at the federal level to, and we're just following that. It's nothing. I don't think we have any discretion on that item. And then to Mrs. Goral's point about the ad hoc committee, I do want to encourage everybody to participate tomorrow so we could all make sure that we're all aligned in the profile that we're putting out. I received the profile tonight and I'll send it out so that everyone can review it beforehand. I've only had a chance to begin reading it. I haven't read it through yet, but that's what we're going to do tomorrow.
A quick question for Paul. So they have 2 resolutions coming forward from personnel and policies, correct?
3.
Okay, we have 3. Okay, just wanted to make sure I had it right. Thank you.
2 insurance policies, and 1 the coronavirus response policy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll move on to economic development. I don't see Jazz. Is anybody in that committee? They don't have any reports either. Anything for economic development? Public Works. Do you have anything for tonight?
No public works meeting. Next scheduled meeting will be the 14th.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Tsuli. Public safety. Aaron, you got anything for this week?
Thank you, Chairman. There's no items for this week. I just want to say that Chairman Haney and Dr. Martell are providing some pretty good numbers and information for us. And I will get with the sheriff to see if they can gather some numbers on what their commissary, if they've seen a hit taken in their commissary, and if there's any increase in federal inmates. Other than that, thank you. That's it.
Mr. Hoffman, is that your hand up? All right, is there anything else for joint caucus that anybody wants to bring up or discuss? Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the coronavirus work that we've been doing, at some point, we should look and see what we spent in addition, and just verify everything's going to be reimbursed by the state or federal government. Just to know if we have to address that at some point in the near future. I guess I'd also like to know too, how things are going in terms of the policies we put in place to reduce the spread of the disease. Is it working? Are people complying? Is there something else we can do to improve our situation in some way? I'd like to hear some of that stuff too.
I know Dr. Martell and Mr. Haney put on every day, I think around 3:30, 4 o'clock, they do give us updates. But yeah, I agree with you with the spending. I know for FEMA, we're supposed to be tracking all of our money spent for anything related, so it can be reimbursed later. And that's another big reason we passed an emergency declaration a couple meetings ago now. So that way it does get us in line to receive those dollars. Mr. Ellis, do you have your hands up?
Just to add to what Mr. Arena said there, I think it came out today that Illinois as a whole had a D- grade. I believe the report was that Winnebago County had a B- grade. So there's still a lot of work to do.
Is there anything else for the greater good of the joint caucus? See none, can I have somebody motion to adjourn? Ms. Crosby, second by Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Fellers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
And thanks, everybody.
All right, be safe.